has evolved in Bangladesh post its separation, its liberation, independence in 1971. The fact that it was the military regime, followed by two successive leaders who alternated in power, developed a very personality-driven cult around and a personality-driven political culture, which was rife with political protest, very personal slandering, the environment of corruption, the fact that the personality-driven nature of the politics meant that it was always one against the other, ensured that the division within Bangladeshi politics became deeper and deeper, and in that mix has been this constant tension between what really is the identity of Bangladesh as a nation, whether it rests on its Bengali tradition or on its rather or on Islam as being an important and component part of the way politics has evolved. And in more recent years, the litigation and the prosecutions of those who played a role in the liberation war has further sort of created a messy mix of political culture. So I think it's a nation which is sort of as like many other countries, is it constantly at war with itself, and it's never had a stable, mature, secure a look at its internally, which is more secular and evolved. So I think it's a mixture of things which have to be viewed as a totality, rather than sort of one particular character, one individual. We've seen over the years that neither of the political parties which have remained in power have managed to steer the country in a secular, democratic manner, which is respectful of rights and has enabled the creation of an honest critique and civil society space. Neither has done that.
Charu,
and that's just caused the polarization to continue.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that I want to ask David to pick up on something you were saying. David, Charu was talking, about political movements within Bangladesh. Now, do you believe the country is at a unique political moment right now? And because the demonstrators continue to come out day after day, do these protesters feel in any way right now that they have a bit of the upper hand?
Well, I wouldn't say that the protests themselves indicate that the country is at that significant a point. I mean, the country is moving towards a point where there are going to be elections. And that is a very sensitive arena for the current government, because they very much want to win those elections, and people believe that they will win them. By hook or by crook. And that is why, to some extent, they are very concerned about the student protests themselves, that they don't get out of hand or are used politically in a way that could destabilize the government at the moment.
Omar, Bangladeshi officials have said that if allegations that protesters or journalists were beaten, that if those allegations are proven, then those who had perpetrated those crimes, that they will go on trial. Do you believe that that could actually happen?
Well, I hope some action is taken. Sadly, we haven't got much of a precedent to go on here. But I'm very glad that the Bangladeshi authorities are open to the fact that there are people who attack a largely peaceful demonstration, they attack journalists, and that the rule of law must stand for them. I mean, if they're looking for evidence, you can just go down what was Shahidul's timeline, and you could see images of his broken camera. There are students that we've spoken to who were injured very badly. There were journalists we've spoken to who have been injured. It would be a very, very welcome development if action is taken against them, because so far We've seen the authorities and their auxiliaries in the form of this pro-government students' union being unleashed to punish the students who exercise their human rights by peacefully taking to the streets to voice their demands.
Charu, the government is also promising to consider road safety reforms to address the students' concerns. They're also reportedly considering imposing the death penalty in cases of deliberate road deaths. Is that bringing reassurance to those who were out in the streets demonstrating for so many days?
I think there's a great deal of disillusionment within Bangladesh with the ability of the government to truly respond. There needs to be some very serious example setting in terms of prosecutions and in terms of taking action against those who are guilty, and indeed sort of not only putting in place good legislative measures, but actually implementing them and ensuring that something is done about corruption, the widespread corruption which allows for, as I was mentioning before, the fact that people who are not illegally procure licenses and therefore if you go to the heart of what happened with this particular protest was the killing of these two students, and the reason why such incidents can go unpunished. And I think there needs to be some serious example setting before the government can actually convince the people of their good intent and sway this massive public opinion which is rising against them. So yes, perhaps there could be potential. It's a very emotional time at the moment in Bangladesh, but some serious measures could perhaps build strong public opinion.
David, what does all this mean going into the elections? How does this play out?
Well, I think it's important for the government that they get control over the situation, and that is why there have been two student protests this year. There's been an earlier one of university students who were protesting against the quotas for government jobs, and that was also quite a significant protest that got large numbers of people out onto the streets. And after some days, the government also then, or the Prime Minister then, appeared to cave in, although she hasn't actually taken the steps that she promised to do. But she caved in and that diffused the protests. And the same thing is happening now. The government has appeared to take heed of the demands of these students and appears to have significantly diffused the demands. And I think that the numbers of students on the streets these days has reduced to very few. So, I mean, the government is obviously really tried to make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. As the elections come through, I mean, the issue is whether they're going to be free and fair elections. To what extent will there be, will the opposition parties be able to properly campaign? To what extent will there be no vote rigging? These are really significant questions, and most is difficult to say, but a lot of people have very significant doubts whether the government is really committed to any free and fair elections. The Election Commission is not a strong independent body. The administration is highly politicized. The political parties at the moment can't function in any independent way. So it's difficult to see how in December or so, when the elections take place, that the people will get a free choice to vote. And to some extent, I mean, it's, David, one shouldn't make these.
David, I'm sorry. David, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just that we're almost out of time. I want to throw one last question to Omar. Omar, from your vantage point, and we only have about a minute left, can we expect to see more protests going forward?
Well, I think elections are a tense time, and we may see people take to the streets again. It's important, though, that the government of Bangladesh, which actually has earned commitment on its own streets as it has done to the Rohingya. Otherwise, these situations can get out of hand and they can tarnish its reputation globally, as we're seeing now.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much to all our guests, Charu Latahog, Omar Waresh, and David Bergman. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again. Go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/